Paul Garrison with the East Village Times back with us right now on John and Jim. So, Paul, first of all, thank you and happy holidays. And I want to start with the quarterbacks because there's so much, obviously, interest and intrigue, especially in Sean Lewis's offense. And it all starts at quarterback. So they've made a couple of additions. Let's start with Jaden Denal, who transfers from the University of Michigan. Now, he's a Southern California guy. He's a dual threat option. He played a little bit during their national championship season 2 years ago. He didn't play at all in 2024. What do we know about Denegal and how he potentially fits in well for what Sean Lewis wants to do?
Well, happy holidays. Yeah, with Denegal, I think, everything that you said is spot on. There's a little bit of just the unknown because he hasn't played a lot of college snaps. But he was an unbelievable prep guy. He's huge. I think the way that he fits is, he has the ability to make every throw that Sean Lewis would want in his offense. I mean, it's a guy who, as they're looking to stretch the field vertically, stretch it horizontally, should be able to do that incredibly well. And I think the other piece of it is he's a little bit of a dual threat. I think definitely his arm is better than his legs, but I think defenses are going to have to take him seriously as far as how he's going to be able to run the football. And I think the other real big positive is he's old. He's been around a college football program for many years, going to be an upperclassman. And I think that bodes well for, just his ability to kind of hit the ground running and make a big impression in fall camp.
So you have Denegal from Michigan, and then you have Bert Emanuel Jr., who we saw at Central Michigan this year, the son of a longtime NFL player. We've joked with Jim about Bert Emanuel. Jim has no idea who Bert Emanuel is. I'm like, Jim, you don't know football. But anyway, his son, Bert Emanuel Jr., is a really talented kid. Now, he's dealt with injuries. They haven't necessarily solely used him at quarterback, but he has played some quarterback at CMU. What can you tell us about his skill set and how he may fit in?
I think the part with him is that, you mentioned the limited opportunities that he had at Central Michigan. But what he did with those limited opportunities is nothing short of spectacular. Sean Lewis would talk about, how important it is to try to get explosive plays. And that's all that Burke Emanuel has done, in covering the Central Michigan San Diego State game. All the fans and the media up there, they wanted him to play and be the starter in that game and get all the stuff, all of the snaps, and not Joe Labas, who ended up being the quarterback that led Central Michigan to a win there. But it's just somebody who brings explosive plays. I think the way he fits into the offense is very similar, obviously, to Jaden Denal, just because you are looking for somebody who can force the defense to have to account for the QB in the run game. Somebody who, if given a little bit of space, can turn something that should be small, that most QBs would make a small gain, into a big one. I think that you look at some of the passing numbers, and I think with the way that the offense is and the offense runs, I think that they can coach these guys into having, a higher completion percentage. In the case of Emmanuel, and that we've seen in college so far, through, the screen games or, quick reads and things of that nature. So they're very similar. I think that, again, he's another guy who is very big, and I think he can handle kind of that beating that you take and are going to take in any system. And it's an exciting day, an exciting time, when you're looking at what they're going to do.
It's interesting comparing the quarterback from 2024 to 2025, and that's probably not completely fair. In 2025, but you do have probably a little more college experience in there, although they had some of that in 2024 as well. Of course, Danny O'Neill was the one that made a lion's share of the starts for Sean Lewis. All right, Paul Garrison, East Coast Times, is with us right now. Speaking of 2024 to 2025, how would you compare their emphasis right now on bolstering line play compared to what they did last season in the portal? It feels like there's been a huge emphasis on the offensive and defensive lines, and even like tight ends, blocking tight ends that they've added here in the last few days as well.
Yeah, I think where San Diego State is in kind of the stratosphere of college football, I think the portal is never going to be a net positive for them. Last offseason, left and went to Power Five conferences and things of that nature. And a lot of that offensive line, that they lost a lot of players. Brent Richard Dixon, Florida, Cade Bennett goes to TCU, even Tommy Mirabella was a backup, he was going to UC Davis, and then others in the that they were able to replace. They weren't quite as good as the guys they lost. This year, they've done a good job to keep their guys in house, and so now the players that are true, they're not necessarily guys that you're just bringing in to replace. And so I think there has been that emphasis, and they're looking for competitive depth. And I think that you look at kind of the versatility of the guys that they brought in, especially on the offensive line, play kind of guard or tackle position. Defensive line is pretty much coming back. With the new ruling with JC guys, I think that would probably potentially give a guy like Tupu Alualu, a guy, another year of eligibility because he played time in the JC, and what that looked like for him and where he would want to continue his career is a question that is just being asked today with the NCAA's ruling. But I think that overall, not only are these guys a year older who was able to stay in the system, but they're now able to supplement those guys and not necessarily have to replace them. And I think that's a huge difference between the 2 years.
Yeah, that's really good insight. Paul Garrison, East Village Times, with us right now on John and Jim. I don't know the right word here. I don't think exploit is the word I'm looking for, but I think it makes sense in this context, which is like, how is the staff exploiting their Southern California location on the recruiting trail, specifically in the portal? Because I see someone like Christian Washington, who starred at Helix, and we talked about Jaden Denal, who's out of Southern California, not San Diego, but Los Angeles area. How much of an advantage is that, so to speak, that they can cast that wide net of players that may have left for other pastures, but they can come back home within that 100-mile radius?
Yeah, I think you look at a lot of these guys, and going and looking in that Southern California, as you described, is exactly what they're trying to be able to do. And I think, as we've talked about with the transfer portal, with NIL, it kind of it changes the way I think relationships are built in college football, and it makes it to less of an amateur sport, and it makes it more of kind of that professional, this is about business, which I think has the other effect of making, the people that you really know and that can count on kind of shine a little bit brighter. And I think these kids really want to be closer to their family, want to be closer to their community, their support networks. Those, maybe they could, in years past, they could find that in other spots because they were forced to be in one place for a long period of time. And, not only are kids choosing to transfer out, but schools are saying, like, you haven't made enough progress, so you need to go find somewhere else as well. And so you kind of have a little bit of that distrust, I think, that's there, and a little bit of more of that business-like mentality at the school itself. And so I think the opportunity to play in front of the people that really support you is really good. And I think it's incredibly smart for the Aztecs, not only to reach out to guys that are going to be close and maybe be able to tap into that, but everything is about money, and everything is about the price of scholarships. And if you can get guys that are in state versus out of state, and being able to do all of that, I think it just is a win-win for everybody. And the staff has seemed to be doing a good job of targeting those guys that are close to the campus and trying to make them Aztecs.
Paul, before you go, because I believe you've written on this, but what's the impact of the new DC, the defensive coordinator change from Eric Schmidt to Rob Aurich? What's that impact in your opinion?
It obviously remains to be seen, but in my opinion, I think it's a great hire. I think you can look at a lot of different factors. Obviously, Rob Aurich did a great job in Idaho in taking them from, being I heard the interview you guys had with him. He talked about the same thing, like taking a defense that had given up over 30 points a game all the way down to 20 in 2 years. There's a lot of things to point to, but I think for me, the part of it that I find the most interesting and the most fascinating is how he was the choice of the players on the defense. And, that Trey White and Chris Johnson and Tana Latuli, like they made their voice known inside of the Fowler Athletic Center that they wanted Rob Aurich to be the guy to be hired. And I think that there and when I asked Rob Aurich about it, he talked about keeping that close to his heart and his appreciation for these guys for them doing that and stepping up in that regard. And I think that the work that they're doing is they're kind of working to prove each other correct. That not only that the faith that the players had in Rob Aurich, that he's going to be able to coach in a way that's going to show that they were right, but the players are going to try to prove with their play that they made the right decision as well. And I think that intangible of just working a little bit harder and kind of putting themselves on the line for each other, I think can make a really positive and a big impact. And I think the other part of it that's really important is they're not starting from scratch in year 2 with the system. Rob Aurich saw everything that Eric Schmidt did, and he's able to build off it as opposed to laying a brand new foundation.
Paul, really appreciate it, man. Thank you for all your insight for our listeners over the last year plus here as we've reached the holiday season, and with Christmas and New Year's coming, I'm sure we'll catch up early in 2025. But I've really enjoyed having you on throughout the course of the year and previous years, and looking forward to doing it again coming up in 2025. So Merry Christmas, and thank you, Paul.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and you're the man. Thank you.
I appreciate you, Paul. Paul Garrison, East Village Times. If you're an Aztec fan, you're not following Paul Garrison, you really should be throughout social media. He does a terrific job covering Aztec athletics. All right.